Just a few little housekeeping notes. We will be having some questions peppered out throughout the presentation for audience to provide your feedback. And Michelle will be, if you could raise your hand, we can make sure that you get a microphone so the attendees on Zoom can also hear your response. And then we will also have time for Q&A at the end of the session, about 5 minutes, and we have microphones on either end that you could stand up and ask your question. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce Mary Strain. She leads business development activities for artificial intelligence and machine learning for higher education at AWS. Mary began her career as a middle school teacher in the Bronx, New York, and since that time, she has had leadership roles in education technology, curriculum, higher education, professional, and workforce development projects. Mary has advised several state and higher education institutions on the adoptions of competency-based learning, digital credentials, innovation, and workforce development. Mary has been an advisor to the University of Pennsylvania Education Design Studio and the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color. As an advisor to educational technology firms, higher education institutions, school systems, and state agencies, Mary has been on the leading edge of bringing innovative technology to the public sector for 2 decades. Please welcome Mary. Thank you.
Can you turn it on? Oh, there it goes. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. And AWS, my colleagues and I are delighted to be here and to be sponsoring the UC Tech Conference this year. Usually a much smaller room for me, so this is exciting. I'm delighted with the interest in AI and with AWS's approach to artificial intelligence. And one of the greatest values I think I can bring to this audience is the fact that I spend all day, every day, talking to leaders across the country in higher education about what they're thinking about with AI and machine learning, what they're thinking about relative to generative AI. So I'm just a vessel to share what your colleagues are doing around the country and provide any insights that I may be able to offer. This is a highly new space, an emerging practice, so I don't have all the answers, and part of the conversations here that you're having with your colleagues and with me just help us all kind of get better about understanding what the use cases are, what the risks are, what the opportunities that might present themselves, and more importantly, how we deploy these solutions in a way that really centers student achievement, student learning, centers the organization, and is highly responsible. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to talk about today, so thank you. And so I think we just wanted to have maybe a few people share a little bit about, are any of you using artificial intelligence right now? And I know some are, so I'd love to just maybe have 1 or 2 people shout out a use case from your institution or a project that you might be working on, so we can get a sense of who in the audience is engaged in using AI or machine learning. Excellent. Anyone else? Love it. Awesome. Good. Anyone else? Programming? In the hospital. I think that's so great because we're hearing just use cases across the whole sector, right? In the clinical side, on the campus side, for information technology. So it really is kind of one of those pervasive technologies that people are investigating to support all kinds of efficiencies and improvements across the campus. AWS has been engaged in supporting higher education institutions in using machine learning and artificial intelligence to center the student experience and improve teaching, learning, and operations on the campuses for over a decade, really. And so just high level, a few use cases include learning content personalization. So how do you create hyper-personalized experiences for students, which is increasingly a demand for students? How do we localize content? How do we engage them with high interest topics, or even using generative AI, summarize course content and allow them to access it through chatbots for additional supports and tutoring? Administration and enrollment, this is really my favorite topic, which is, I think of artificial intelligence as the world's greatest office assistant. It really does the things that we don't want to do, and it does them without getting tired, and it tells them, it does exactly what you tell it to do. So there are all kinds of operational efficiencies that can be leveraged using artificial intelligence, and they're not sort of the more third rail use cases that we think about in terms of teachers and students, but it's really more around how do we process paperwork differently? How do we do forecasting better? How do we ingest information from students more efficiently and more effectively and save money? Marketing and recruitment, so as universities are looking to, increase the number of students applying to their university and to save money on marketing and recruitment dollars, there's ways to, again, hyper-personalize outreach to prospective candidates, understand better which students are going to be most successful in your institutions, and we do that with machine learning algorithms. Another use case I wanted to highlight that we're working on currently with a few institutions is guided pathways, using machine learning to help students understand the best possible course combination so that they can succeed and graduate on time. So rather than taking a very difficult chemistry class and a very difficult mathematics class in the same course where there might be a high likelihood of failure, we can recommend through machine learning other pathways for them to achieve the same outcomes and to expedite their success. So there are multiple use cases across the campus, certainly including research, that we've been invested in for many, many decades, and we'd love to talk to you about that, certainly our colleagues here. AWS has a stack of machine learning capabilities that include what we call the three-layer cake. And it's impossible to read, but that's because there's so many services. And we've been engaged in developing and supporting machine learning and artificial intelligence, as I said, for decades. The bottom layer of the stack represents our infrastructure, the hardware, the silicon, the infrastructure that we use to support all of the machine learning and AI services. Lots of institutions who have very advanced researchers often just access that layer of the stack to be able to run research projects. The middle layer of the cake is our machine learning services, really anchored in our solution called SageMaker, which is an integrated machine learning development environment that offers an end-to-end capabilities for anyone working on machine learning projects. So if you have data scientists, researchers, and even your own engineers and developers who want to run machine learning solutions, we have ways to do that that are essentially low-code and no-code machine learning opportunities. Everything from data cleansing and data ingestion, running inferences with recommended algorithms and output. The top layer of the cake, the frosting, is our AI services. And they're really services that were developed as part of a simple API call that helped to solve significant business problems across the institution, forecasting student enrollment, forecasting revenue, using our Amazon Translate, Transcribe, which is really important for equity and access for students who are looking to access content that whether they have visual problems or they have issues with hearing or if they have language barriers, you can just open up accessibility to the content across the institution with those services. And then our Amazon Textract and Amazon Comprehend, which are natural language solutions that allow you to work with paper documents and ingest them into your downstream systems, which we'll speak about a little bit more in detail. But again, those AI services are available just with a simple API call. And I like to think of them as, solutions that operate under the hood with machine learning and artificial intelligence. So your teams don't even know they're working necessarily with AI and machine learning. They're just getting really great business outcomes. Enter generative AI. So we were all happily working with our AI and machine learning services, and generative AI is a transformative capability that everyone's super excited to talk about. I don't really have to ask this audience what it is, but it is the ability to create new content based on foundation models that are trained on vast quantities of knowledge that allow you to offer reasoning and language capabilities and interact with artificial intelligence in ways that we haven't seen before. So we sort of know what generative AI is. I know many of you are already experimenting with it. I'd really love to know what terrifies you about it in the context of higher education. Anybody? What? Security, good one. How is the information you're putting into the models used and more? Anyone else? Yes. X bias. Exactly. Beautiful. That's right. Super important. Great. Privacy of data. Cost. Wonderful. Well, not wonderful, but yes. Disinformation. These are important concerns that I think are weighing heavily on institutions around the country. You know, I think about the value proposition of higher education is that you're offering truth and content that's premium and accurate. So how do we leverage this technology to maintain that sort of value proposition in the market? Does anybody see any potential? I know. Any good things we can get from generative AI? Excellent output, speed. Yep, organizing. Excellent, personalized teaching. I'm sorry?
Doing the work I hate.
Yeah, right? That's what is it you want to stop doing? That's my favorite thing about artificial intelligence. Those are all great use cases and more, and more, and more, right? So it's all about balancing the risk and the opportunities. So I like to ask that question because it usually reflects my next slide, which is, these are things I'm hearing from your peer institutions around the country. The concerns around inaccuracy and false authority, disinformation, misinformation, and simple hallucinations. You know, you want students to be able to interact with content and get responses from prompts and information that reflects your institutional value in the content that you provide and the copyrighted IP that you own. Inappropriate content is also another one, which is sort of like that, you know, just something weird that you might end up being liable for. You know, so how do we make sure that the content we're putting out to our constituency is not just accurate, but appropriate? Cost. So everybody is, you know, playing around with solutions available in the market, and we really need to understand the cost of these solutions over time. Because when we think about the opportunity to enhance teaching, learning, institutional efficiency, improve healthcare, we're talking about potentially millions of API calls a day. And so we have to understand the compute costs associated with that. Latency is a big issue, so we want to make sure that they're performative and that we're providing real-time responses. Data privacy and security, which everyone mentioned, is a huge, huge concern. You know, are we training the models with information that we don't have the right to share? Or are we training models or sharing information that is part of our research IP? And then it's got a copyright and IP. So these are just, you know, echoing the concerns that the group has already shared. So where has AWS been in all of this? And raise your hand if you haven't heard about what AWS has been doing in all of this. So I like to, people say, well, where have you been? What have you been doing? And I think the answer is that we have not been delayed, we have been deliberative. And we say that because we went and looked at what was happening in the market and architected a solution that we think addressed significant market gaps. Market gaps around security architecture, cost, latency, and more importantly, or not more importantly, but equally important, accuracy. So our approach is bedrock, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it really centers the ability to be flexible. We do not believe that there will be one large language model or foundation model to rule them all. We believe that there will be a proliferation of models that are fit for purpose, that are finely tuned for specific industries or content, and that your ability to select the model that works best for you from a cost perspective, an accuracy perspective, and from a responsible AI perspective will be very important as a future architecture. So the ability to select the foundation model that your organization works with, and to select multiple. So if you want to generate images for an alumni magazine, you want to use a model that is fine-tuned for image generation versus something that might be better tuned for chatbots or text. The next was to look at secure customization. So the ability to work within your own VPC, bring the model to your data, rather than bring your data to the model. Everything that occurs with our foundation models and our generative AI approach occurs within your own VPC. You bring your data, call an API, which brings the foundation model to your data, and fine-tune it within your own environment. So by default, no prompts, no content, no data, and no responses are ever shared with any foundation model, including third-party models, which we'll talk about in a minute. The most secure, I can't read it, I'm sorry. Most cost-effective infrastructure. Again, cost is a huge issue. Amazon is delighted to work with our own silicon. So we use our Trainium chips and our own silicon, which we believe will provide a more cost-effective solution in the long term as folks look to scale and grow their generative AI capabilities across the institutions. An easy way to work with foundation models. Those AI services that I described at the top of that stack are all being infused with generative AI capabilities under the hood, so that your business users who might want to summarize a patient intake form or respond to an accreditation request for your university about how many of your faculty have terminal degrees, they can do that by simply querying information and using our AI services. And then I'm sorry. Generative AI-powered solutions, that's what I was just talking about. So a few months ago, Amazon announced Amazon Bedrock. Amazon Bedrock is a managed service generative AI capability that allows you to access multiple foundation models through a single API call. So you have options in terms of the foundation models that you use. Amazon has developed 2 proprietary foundation models, Amazon Titan, which is a text-to-text model, and Amazon Embeddings, Titan Embeddings, which is text-to-embeddings, which allows you to submit text and get embeddings back. We're also offering a marketplace of third-party models. They include Jurassic 2, Claude, which is from Anthropic, and also is designed according to the UN Commission on AI Human Rights, which is exciting. And then the Stable Diffusion, which is a text-to-image model. This is our initial offering, and we expect to add additional foundation models over time. Again, allowing you to select fit-for-purpose models and to take advantage of the marketplace around foundation models as they grow. So that's our approach. That's something that you can talk to your AWS representatives about accessing now. And this is just a little bit about some of the use cases that I'm seeing across institutions and what people are thinking about. So if we talk about enhancing the student learning experience, it's the opportunity to reduce friction for students in accessing content. So if they wanted to have a generative AI chatbot to access the syllabus and the course content, even lots of institutions are thinking about recording class lectures and then making them available to students, to enroll their own tutors. There's hyper-personalization, so the ability to connect personalization algorithms to generative AI and provide students with hyper-personalized information, such as a schedule. So this student is a Division I athlete. They have practice from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., and then they have these 2 classes. We're going to recommend lunch. Then they have 2 more classes, then they have practice. And you know what? There's a play on campus tonight. So a way to create that hyper-personalized experience that engages students in the entire value proposition of the university experience. Boost productivity. Again, this, you all can tell, is my favorite use case for AI. Things like document processing, enhancing forecasting, eliminating paperwork. There's lots of opportunity to boost productivity using generative AI and standard AI capabilities. And then improve operations, similarly across research. When we think about just working with massive, massive data sets and the availability to engage some of the social science researchers in research in ways that they haven't been able to access before. So certainly top of mind for all of us should be the responsible use of AI. The U.S. Department of Education recently published a report on the use of responsible AI. I would encourage everyone to access it. The principles outlined here are part of Amazon's own commitment to responsible AI and to ensure that we are supporting our customers in the responsible use and deployment of artificial intelligence. It's a little complicated subject. Many of the large language models, the foundation models, don't have a lot of transparency around how the data was created or tuned. So when we think about the data that they're used, essentially everything available on the internet, we can assume that there's bias based in, because it's data and information that was created by people who are often biased. So working with our partners, we're looking at ways to bring that model into your own data and then work with your data to assess potential bias using SageMaker Clarify or other services that we have. But more than that, I think it's about you working not just with your own institution, but with your educational technology partners. I work extensively with ed tech partners around the world, and they're fast and furious in their building of artificial intelligence solutions and capabilities and the solutions that are being deployed in your schools right now. So I would encourage everyone to think about how we are engaging with them as vendors to ensure that they are also engaging in responsible AI practices and have explainability associated with the solutions that they're bringing to campus for students and faculty to interact with. So that's very exciting, but I love this article because it's time to talk about boring AI. Generative AI certainly is exciting. There's a lot going on. There's solutions available from Amazon and other providers that will be transformative. But sometimes I like to think about what can have a significant impact on an institution right now. And our intelligent document processing solution is one of those examples that's getting a lot of traction because it is artificial intelligence. It saves money, it saves time, and increases efficiency. So I think the idea of thinking about how can we start thinking about AI services and ways to implement AI to enhance efficiency and to support accuracy across the campus without having to sacrifice the true value proposition of the student engagement with their faculty and the community. So, I don't know, does anybody here work with paper? So we see higher education as a document-heavy process. And when I say documents, it's not just that you actually are being handed paper, but every time a student has to show an ID, you know, a driver's license, a passport, every time a student has to submit a FAFSA form, every time a student has to go to the registrar or needs a transcript processed, every time you have a Title IX complaint that needs to be documented, or you receive, unfortunately, a police report from the local community, complaints. All of the compliance and paperwork and documentation is overwhelming. It really, for most of you, is certainly in the millions of documents a year. And we think about not just the cost savings and the efficiency of working with those digitally, but also the friction that creates for students. Underrepresented, underserved students often have the most difficult time bringing documentation to the university. I will tell you that I never went to the bursar's office, ever, even though I should have in college, because I always owed them money, so I was never going to go there. So there's affective filters that simply by the institution itself or the individuals who are working in the institution, it's not their own fault, but students feel like they can't access them. Providing digital documents, interacting digitally helps to improve that relationship and reduce those affective filters. So what is IDP? You know, anybody here ever take a picture of a check so that it's automatically deposited into your bank account? That's essentially what we're talking about here. So it is using a combination of Textract, which is an AI-enhanced OCR engine, to classify documents, to identify key entities in the document, and then to send those documents to downstream processes. Think about the invoices. Does anybody here have invoices at their school? Or patient intake forms, or insurance cards? Those are the kinds of things. This is just a quick architectural overview. I won't spend too much time, but you simply upload a PDF, a JPEG, an image to S3. Textract will examine the document and classify it. This is an invoice, this is a driver's license, this is a transcript. And then it will extract the key entity information. It can take it all, or you can set up queries and rules so it takes only the information you need. And then you can configure that to be sent to downstream processes. It also comes with a confidence score. So if it's unreadable, then it will be routed for someone to review. When we think about a hospital that has intake forms from patient records or insurance cards, the ability to process those documents can reduce individual people time by up to 30%. So imagine if you could cut down the amount of time your admissions officers, financial aid officers, bursars, registrars, AP payments people have to work with documents by 30%, what they could do. They could really focus on students who need the support and the help and remove that paperwork and the undifferentiated tasks that are simply just not what we want to do. We also have a special configured solution associated with medical forms. So just to highlight that for those of you in the AMCs. And this is just an example. We all know that the volume, velocity, and variety of unstructured content is exploding as much as we might create online forms for all of that, which you actually don't have to do if you use IDP. The Forrester report was looking at processing documents, estimates that it's about $2.50 for an individual to process a document. And you may say, well, we have our students enter their passport number or their address, and they get it wrong a lot, and that just causes more friction. But it is, a cost associated with that. So this is information I got from a resource online, but 71% of UC students receive financial aid. There are 8 individual documents that you did not create that are required to be submitted with every financial aid application, just as an example. So that's about $3.75 million a year in document processing. That's a potential savings for the UC system, just on that one process. I'm sure you have a few invoices in there too. So, the healthcare industry is certainly full of paper, and even digital documents that you might want to use and extract information from later, made available, can be up to a $300 billion cost just in that industry alone. So I think beyond just the ability to kind of ingest a proof of address form and have it sent down to the student information system, in the age of generative AI, we need to think about what can we do with that information? What if we had it all? What if you didn't just extract the information you needed from the transcript, but you had the full transcript and all the data associated with it? How can you improve the student experience with generative AI layered on top of all of the documents and information that you're getting? I think the accreditation, and I don't really know the answer to this. When we think about the accreditation process for the institution, let alone a department, which happens frequently too, the ability to put all of the syllabus, all the course content, all of the information about students, everything that you need to respond to an accreditation in a generative AI capability through document processing or text extract, and then simply ask the questions that the accrediting body is asking you and have those generated over time is pretty substantial savings in terms of individuals' ability to respond to those types of compliance requests. So just wanted to put the plug in for boring AI. So this is in conclusion. I'm probably way ahead of my time, but in conclusion, I think we want to think about, AWS says that it's AI and machine learning with people, not instead of people. What are the processes that we can use to use AI to augment the capabilities of your constituency, your faculty, your students, your staff, your community at large? So to really think about how we work collaboratively with those constituents, but really automate the processes and the things that they don't want to do or can be done more efficiently and more effectively with artificial intelligence or other technologies. So what are some of the potential barriers to implementation? So especially when we think about something like document processing, I often hear, well, I have 9 people in that office who that's their job. So that's certainly a consideration about change management. How do we manage that? How do we help people upskill? How do we help people really focus on the things that they want to do? We had an interesting conversation with another university where that came up, and we'll just say, for example, the financial aid people were upset about potentially taking away some tasks. So we talked about what they don't want to do anymore. And then we asked another department what they thought they shouldn't do anymore. So sometimes if you ask another department, what should financial aid stop doing? And we're asked financial aid, what should the registrar's office stop doing? It's not easy, but it's an interesting conversation to start having about what can we, in terms of digital transformation, remove from the workload that is not providing the existential value of what your universities are providing to their constituencies. I'd love to just open it up for conversation, answers to these prompts, or any other questions that you might have that I may or may not be able to answer, but I have a friend. Does that work?
If you have questions, you can come to the microphone, or we can have the microphone come to you.
Hi, Sean Paymer from UC Merced. I just wanted to ask a question. You mentioned, and actually pretty emphatically, about associated bias with people's information that is being searched for from the web. However, how would you address that in the fact that AI is being programmed by people? And how would you eliminate that bias, or how do you propose that that bias is eliminated with generative AI?
I think it's a complicated question. When we have traditional AI services, and I can only speak to how we work within Amazon SageMaker machine learning environment, we have a service called Amazon Clarify, which allows you to do bias detection on your own data sets that you're working with in Amazon machine learning solutions. When you introduce the foundation models, the scale and scope of those models is so large, and there is no transparency on most of the proprietary models about the training data associated, it becomes more complicated. I believe, and I would love everybody's thoughts and input and collaboration on this, that if we are using the foundation models simply to augment the response, so there is a architecture called Retrieval Augmented Generative AI, RAG architecture, where you are using your own data, bringing the foundation model in, really only to provide context and sort of a normal human response. So rather than getting a search response to a question, these are the answers, you get a couple paragraphs. In that situation, I would be curious, I think it's a tremendous research question, can we, when we've centered that data separately from the foundation model, look at potential bias detection within that? And to be determined, but I think it's certainly something that's possible with smaller data sets than it is to sort of say, okay, let's look at the 170 billion parameter model and see if there's any bias. So it's not really an answer to your question, but it's certainly something we're thinking about.
Could you repeat the acronym RA?
RAG, delightful. Retrieval Augmented Generative AI. Not my acronym, but that's what it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll repeat that for folks.
Can you take the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, we do have a great solution based on our AI-powered search service called Kendra, which you can use to web crawl or crawl your Constituents wiki, and then you use the search result as a prompt into the large language models that you can use today with SageMaker Jumpstart. We have a collection of large language models, Hugging Face, and so on. Any of your account solutions architect, as well as AI ML specialist architects can help you with it. I can actually post the blog post into UC Tech Amazon Web Services channel, but I probably will need permission to do that because I don't want it to look like advertisement. But it's really like today when I'm asked to build demos, I mean that's a typical case where you have your web pages today, and if you give permission to crawl it, that gives you the more you crawl and bigger the model, the better the result. So happy to post that solution if there's interest.
Thank you.
Yes, we can help you do that.
Okay, great. I'll follow up with you afterwards.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
I see one on the chat. What sorts of educational discounts does AWS offer for UC? And who would we contact to get started once we know what services we would likely to utilize initially or for development?
I don't know. But you should absolutely talk to your AWS account managers, and they can speak to you. And I know that, yes?
One of the account reps can help with that. And that was a virtual question. We can post that answer also.
Yeah, so there's a number of ways that you can get credits with AWS. So the best way to do it would be to contact your account team. They can help guide you through the enterprise discount program that AWS and the University of California system have recently negotiated. There's an abundance of credits that are available to help you accelerate your workloads in the cloud. So if you do have generative AI workloads, really any new workloads that you're trying to take on, contact your account team. They can help you navigate that process, and they can make sure that you have the right support from AWS to help make that execution successful.
Thank you, Alec. I should also mention regarding Amazon Bedrock, it is in preview. We do have several UC systems that have been granted preview access. So that would be potentially another conversation follow-on to sort of hear from your colleagues about how they've been testing and experimenting with Amazon Bedrock. The general availability release is expected very early Q4, so really not that much further away. So those of you who are interested in taking a look at Bedrock, please be in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you about how you get yourself set up to flip the switch as soon as it's available. And to Robert's point, if you want to work with a particular data set, having that Amazon Kendra as the search engine that allows you to tag that content and make best use of the generative AI capabilities going forward is a great place to start. Yes, over here.
Yes, so. I think so.
I can hear you. I can repeat it if you want.
So my name is Jeffrey Weekly. I'm Director of Research Computing at UC Santa Cruz. And while I see a lot of potential on the enterprise or administrative side of this, I always have to ask the question, is there any benefit in this for our researchers? Do you know of cases, as you say, that are high value for researchers? Researchers are very interested in using machine learning and AI techniques, not to replace the research that they do, but to augment the research that they do. And I was wondering if you had anything you could say about that.
Sure, thank you. And so I want to answer that in two parts. One is that when we think about the research environments that organizations work with, the Amazon SageMaker environment, we believe it democratizes access to machine learning. So you have some researchers who are, rolling their own and doing their own work, but there are other faculty members or part of the constituency within your organization that may not have that deep data science or machine learning expertise. By leveraging the Amazon SageMaker platform and Amazon SageMaker Canvas, which is a low-code, no-code access to machine learning environments that you can upload a CSV file, it'll recommend data cleansing options, it'll recommend inference for you. Those really just accelerate your ability to offer research opportunities across the campus. So that's one way that we've seen a lot of universities working to just bring more researchers on that platform, and then also to manage that platform from a security standpoint and a machine learning ops standpoint. On the generative AI use case, it's the ability to just have exponentially more data available to provide context, even simple things like summarizing for your prior research for a grant application. But the data access is really the thing that we're seeing, the access and the context that large language models provide to data that institutional researchers are working with now. And if you'd like a deeper dive, I have a colleague who's much smarter about academic research than myself. We'd love to set up a call and have him talk about what he's seeing.
Hello? Okay, great. First of all, anybody who's interested in doing deeper dives, feel free to drop by our booth because all your account managers and solutions architects, many of them are over there. And Jeff, I'm the solutions architect for your account. and I do a lot of research computing support, and I've also supported Berkeley's data science program for the past 4 semesters. That's usually the capstone course where we have like 200 students coming through doing their graduation project, machine learning models, and most recently large language models. I can tell you where your account team today can help you. So we all know that large language models are massive. So if your researchers looking to do that and need to host that, then they can work with their solutions architect, namely me in this case, to try to figure out if they have the proper service limits, right, to get the instances they need. If they're using SageMaker, there are also service limits that they may need to apply, and there's also a wide variety of large language models that we can potentially apply to their research, right? So just contacting your solutions architect to help you answer a lot of those questions. We're very happy to do that. So please do use us as a resource. So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Derek Devnish, UC Merced. One of your criteria for responsible AI use was making models explainable. But something like an enormous neural network with millions of parameters is like almost definitionally opaque. It's really not explainable. So what do you do for a researcher who is not well-versed in AI to make something like that explainable enough that they have an intuitive sense of what's going on, even if the model itself like resists like really nitty-gritty cause and effect explanations?
Thank you. Again, if you're working with open source foundation models, they do provide the training data availability. So in terms of sort of at least checking a box that you've accessed a training model that is open, that way is one way. I really do think it's to be determined, and I think that the future state of this is how you are interacting with those models in your own environment, and then looking at the output that you're coming with that, using that model to sort of contextualize. I don't think that researchers or higher education institutions, this is my opinion, are just going to be sort of throwing things out into a foundation model and getting information back and putting it out as a thing at all. So the ability to fine tune and work within your own data environment, that output that you're getting from the prompt and then the data you're working with plus the foundation model should have some level of explainability associated with it based on how you're using that, you're curating your data associated with it. It is not complete. I do not have the exact answer, but I think that's a direction that we all need to be thinking about moving to ensure that they're explainable. So you can at least explain what you put in, and then have some explainability on whether or not you're using an open source model or one that has, standards that are associated with the UN Commission on AI and Human Rights. TBD, a little.
So it was interesting that you said earlier that one of the things that this AI could do is reduce friction. And we were just, there was a privacy and security session yesterday in which the presenters talked about, well, if you don't collect it, it can't be breached, it can't be stolen. And I was just thinking about when you said about, oh, what if you could have all of your student transcript data that you could then generate your accreditation reports? That sounds like, it actually sounds kind of terrifying and disturbing. That, for example, when you used to have to go down to the county courthouse to find someone's address or whether they'd applied for a mortgage, now, like every mortgage broker can get the fact that you applied for a mortgage, send you all these come-ons, and some of them are scams. Mm-hmm. So how do you, just even the thought of having all that data collected in one place seems like the privacy and security implications, like the capability is going way faster than the ethics and the restraints. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. It is. I mean, I think when I use the example of using transcript information or CVs to respond to a accreditation document, I think we're using that data to some extent now anyway to respond to accreditation documents, right? So there's accessibility pieces. I talked to a CIO this morning who had was setting up essentially channels of data access based on need, right? So teaching and learning, or research, or administrative functionality with access roles and permissions associated with them to be able to work within that framework so that you're segmenting the data you have. I do think it's a little bit of a conversation to be had, though, because I think that we collect data to understand our students based on parameters that were set for various things. Why do we know how many veterans we're serving? Because the VA, the GI Bill. How do we know how many students we're serving of a particular, background? Because that's required for reporting and compliance. I wonder what we could learn about our students if we knew more. if we understood them differently and if we had more of a 360 view. So I understand the security and privacy concerns. I think there need to be weighed with the ability to more effectively meet the needs of students from diverse backgrounds who may have different pathways through the institution. But I think we need to architect that together in a way that's secure and safe, but maybe we can serve them differently, my opinion. Yes.
Yes, bring the mic.
These are good, hard questions. I said soft questions. You look like you're going to ask a hard question.
No, I'm not.
You look so relaxed. You're like, I got this.
I do, my name's Gary, I'm a Ruby developer at UC Irvine. Could you talk, well, I guess my first question is there a competitor, I'm on a work group that's analyzing the different AIs that are coming out as far as applications for them and comparing and contrasting. So we've been looking at Bard, GitHub Copilot, ChatGPT. Does Amazon have a direct competitor or anything like that in the sense of maybe for developer-oriented? I know there's Code Whisperer. But is there, have you guys done any research on the comparisons between the two? Is there something like that we can set up licenses for, like a work group like that at the school?
So again, Code Whisperer is our AI-generated code solution. It is available completely free to anyone. So if you want to access it, use it, play with it. We do not have any comparative metrics available compared to other in-market solutions, but it is certainly, as I said, a completely free service powered by generative AI for code development that you're all welcome to access.
Thank you.
We're actually at time. We'll take one more question. Just right there.
I thought I was off the hook.
Hear me?
Yes.
With the technology stack in AWS, are we able to use the Azure Open API that allows us to access ChatGPT?
Through the Bedrock service?
Through the Bedrock service?
Not right now.
Got it.
I don't know that that's on the roadmap.
Ooh.
I don't know. Could be. I just want to share that as somebody who does pay attention to the market, there is a proliferation of extra large language models, large language models, medium-sized models. I think that the ability to access a fit-for-purpose model or one that is specifically designed to support a particular discipline will become more and more the norm, because they will also offer latency and cost savings to go with a medium model rather than a giant model. So that's a little bit of our bet. I think the analogy I used with my team earlier is, some of the competing solutions bought the football team and we bought the stadium.
Thank you to Mary and all of your questions.
Thank you.